Oh, man, I'm laughing because Kyle, my coworker back in Wisconsin, used to work in Colorado. He was just at his going away party because he's coming back to Colorado, and our boss's wife thought that he was me at the going away party, but he had a thicker beard. She said, "Your beard got thicker." Anyway, it's hilarity. There's too few of those good party events with those guys in Wisconsin, but we are here today to talk about elk hunting stories because I have been on some adventures. And what's the date? The date is the 19th. I've been hunting most of the weekends and a few Fridays here and there. The season started on the 2nd here in Colorado, and it's just been very interesting how everything has fallen in place as far as where I've been hunting, who I've been hunting with, and just the new opportunities here in Colorado. So I want to share that with everyone, and some of these interesting stories, those things that you learn, those life or death situations almost, being out in the wild areas and surviving, hunting. It's all part of this whole lifestyle, I guess, that I have developed through learning to hunt with my dad as a young kid, and along the way just getting to know myself and being in touch with the wild. We always sort of said that the church, the woods, is like the spiritual place where I've been accustomed to going basically my whole life. And I think everything's just transpired into even more growth and greatness throughout these experiences, moving to Colorado, which I've been here since last November, right after the Wisconsin whitetail rut. And it's just been nothing but fun. Nothing but weekend adventures with the friends and everything in between. All of these processes since coming here with the weekend stuff and the fun adventures and the hikes and the camping with everyone and the sort of scouting areas throughout the summer has all just been a lifestyle of training for the hunting season, which is upon us now. And I got pretty lucky getting to know some local folks over in a certain area that I've just been accustomed to going and really enjoy that scenery. Like, it's in the northwest part of Colorado compared to, what's up, Woody? You want to say hi, Woody? Come here, Woody. Say hi. We got Woody. What can you say, Woody? What can you say? He coughed. He's... I can... Okay, we got the start of the show right here, Avery. Figured I'd just introduce you to my dogs, those of you that don't know them yet, while they're cruising by. Such cuties. They've been along for a bunch of adventures too, so don't worry about that. But what I was saying before about being fortunate enough to have some hometown family friends, out in this area, and it's just sort of the hookup. And I've been exploring this new area that I've sort of been meeting new friends, new landowners, and luckily have gotten in touch with a family friend and sort of like a cousin out here in Colorado, up in that northwest area. And he's been kind enough to show me a few of his honey holes on public land where I can make a start from and have people around me to let know where I'm at and all that stuff, because hunting solo and camping in the backcountry is definitely something you need to make everyone aware somewhat where you're at, and hopefully if anything happens they can come find you in that area. There's no service, so actually I did find a speck of service up on top of this dark timber area, which I went and explored during this last weekend's hunt. But I want to try and unravel this in chronological order so that everything makes sense to people that are learning and listening as far as tips and tactics. But this is mostly just going to be adventure stories, the hunting story, if I can put it all together here. I've had somewhat of distractions with the dogs, laundry, roommates. There's football tonight, so people are upstairs having some fun, cheering on the team, which I think it's Buffalo. It's crushing somebody. Either way, not really a Buffalo fan. So let's begin with the first weekend. And even before that starts, 3 weeks before then, when I went and set up some trail cameras in one of these local honey holes that been, lucky enough to have a mentor show me, and sort of start from there as far as where to go for hunting. And we came up with a couple different spots to set some trail cameras. One was in this kind of aspen glade that is really close to a transition area of a saddle where animals could stage before they want to go up and over the saddle to transition into different feeding or cover. And it's just a notorious good spot where they've gotten pictures before. So we dropped a camera there and then hiked up and over, or we kind of kept our elevation and moved along the terrain and followed the contour of the terrain into the next drainage, and then up and over and into the next drainage, which actually had water in it. The first one we crossed was dry, no water. And we spotted a big bed right on this knoll, like a bull had laid down in the grass right near some dark timber trees on both sides, but in a place where the wind swirls and the animal can see off. It was somewhat in the open, so I'm guessing this was probably like a nighttime bedding spot, especially after the way it hunted. It seemed like nighttime. And we set up a trail camera down on this creek area where it's a major game crossing, and had high hopes and high-fived and hiked our way back out of there. I drove back to Steamboat and kept training for at least 3-4 nights a week, including riding with the dogs on the skateboard, doing these yoga sessions, and working out, doing cycles of abs and biceps and triceps, and a lot of balance within the yoga and lunges and stretches. And I always make it a point to, before I go elk hunting, is do pigeon every day for 30 days before you go elk hunting, because you always get like on your hips. Seems to be always like a weak spot when you end up throwing your pack on and carrying weight and hiking and all that stuff. It's your hips are the first things that are a little tender from my experience. But I think that also has to do with your hip flexor flexibility to be able to also use that strength front and back to carry the weight. But pigeon really helps. So if I can recommend anything, do pigeon every day for 30 days before you go out hunting, because, you know, who knows? I love it, and it works for me, so I figured I'd pass along. Either way, preparing for the first weekend's hunt included going to the grocery store. I got stuff around here. There's these forks. I got like a pack of spoons. I took like one spoon with me to eat some food. And mostly, actually, everything's still in my food pack, but I eat a lot of those honey like cookies from Stinger. They are amazing. These Stinger vanilla or honey cookies are the best. I can eat them like all day long. I'll eat like 4 during the day and 1 like bigger protein granola bar or something during the day. But I kind of planned all this out and got some mac and cheese, because who doesn't like mac and cheese on the mountain? Turns out it's probably better when it's colder out. I found myself on the mountain eating macaroni and cheese, and it was like 90 degrees. I'm like, I'm hot. This is hot. It tasted really good. And I've been out here a while, but I'm ready for a nap because it's hot. And the thing about that is I'm always not wanting to eat the mac and cheese late at night, because a full day of hunting, I'm literally just like, give me a granola bar, let me crawl into my tent and put my food pack up in a tree and just either read until I fall asleep or journal, write about my day. But normally I journal a little bit and read and then just try to sleep, because some nights can be wild, windy, you just never know, and you're so exhausted. But the first weekend, going up there, after preparing with all my food, I brought too much stuff. I got up there and I didn't realize what was all in my food pouch. There were a full package of these cold shower things. Let me grab them. This full package I brought all the way up the mountain, and I already had other like scent killer wipes and some stuff separated into a plastic bag, and this was just in my pack. I saw that, I'm like, okay, journal. These are the things you don't need. This, I don't need to bring this. I don't need as much food as I thought I needed. It's really like 4 stingers, 1 or 2 granola bars in a day, and that's about all I have the energy to and time to really take to eat, unless I can or want to cook something up at night. But it's kind of like tuck away and get some sleep, get ready for the next day. But what else did I bring that I didn't want? There was a list of stuff. Anyway, let me think now. So the first weekend, I went up there and hunted, and no, it's been a bit. So I went up into this place to tent camp. Okay, so yeah, I hiked up and found it was right by where that big bull bed was that we found. So we found this big bull bed, and I was going to go coyote camp, we call it, where you just light gear and you got your tent right there where you kind of want to hunt, and it's a spike camp, a coyote camp. You're basically camping right where you want to hunt. And I brought a tent. I did have my hammock, but there was a spot that was somewhat flat, kind of slopey. I set up the tent there, and it was not great. I pretty much was sliding to the end of my tent with my feet and sleeping in like a cross-legged tuck or something, like uphill, with my head uphill. It was not great, but it did the trick for that night. And I woke up an hour before daylight, and I walked about 10 yards from the tent and sort of just sat and waited right by where that big bull bed was. And I didn't see anything or hear anything. It got lighter, an hour went by, and I moved my way down to like a small rock outcrop in this berry patch that was on the steep hillside, and you can see the creek, and it's really steep on the other side, except for there's the main trail that comes down. This is like a main trail crossing, and I'm in like a perfect ambush position to see if anything's going to be coming in there. And lo and behold, nothing happened. Besides some birds and some bees, the noises of the bugs, and the bees were so loud that time of year, like September 2nd, so loud. And eventually I made my way over to where the trail camera is. This is about 10 or 11. The wind sort of started to switch to go back uphill, but I'm sitting in this cool draw where the thermals and all the wind goes right down the draw until it gets really hot, and then the wind starts coming up the draw. And I didn't really know where these elk were going to be coming, so I sort of waited until I at least had a decent wind switch or something like that before I went and checked the camera. So I went over there, checked the camera, and sure enough, there were no pictures of deer, but one time an elk came through there. He was a 5x5, probably like a 4-year-old bull, 4 or 5, kind of in between a raghorn and like somewhat of a mature bull. He came in there and he walked right at the camera. Must have seen it just taking pictures. And there's like a picture of his eyeball, like side of his head and his rack. And he goes up the trail, and there were no other elk besides that on the camera, and no bears, nothing. So I was like, okay. And it was like 5 days ago at that point. And I figured out a spot right in that area where I could set up and get comfy in underneath a spruce tree. And if anything were to cross or come in front of me, it'd be really close, like 10 yards. And I was basically sort of deer hunting these elk, trying to wait for something to come through, get water during the heat of the day, which nothing happened. It was really warm, and I was covering myself in dirt and just like really trying to blend in. and throw dirt up in the trees so that there's this scent of like the soil. And elk or ungulates, the deer and elk, they are attracted to like the disturbed soil. Like if a deer makes a scrape or an elk wallows and kicks up a bunch of dirt or racks his antlers in the sagebrush and dirt and kicks it all up, the elk are attracted to that. So it's also a good cover scent. And some cover, like, this first weekend, so I'm sort of like going gung-ho, right? I've got like dirt all over my face. I took my hat and everything off and covered myself completely full of dirt. All my clothes are all dirt, and I bury my feet in the dirt below me, and I'm kind of sitting in this beautiful spot with this sort of rock ledge, and it stepped down to the perfect like foot level, and I've got really good cover and just this opening looking into this glade, and it's just beautiful. I was sitting there. I made coffee in my Jetboil, and I'm just writing my journal and taking in the day and like taking a nap and just waiting for anything to happen, and nothing happened. But that's sort of the theme to hunting a lot of time, is nothing happens besides those small wins, right? Like later I moved sort of off slightly so that my scent stream would be going not right down the draw but somewhat parallel, and waited till evening fell, and I saw a pine marten right in the draw, right below me. A pine marten, just saw him slither down a tree, and he started moving through right next to the creek, and that was really cool. So it's just those small things when it's early season and you never know what's going to go on, what's going to happen, who's around, who's not around. So that night, this is the second night, so I end up going to where my camp is, and I set up my hammock basically over my tent almost, like in this spot where I had like my tent and then the hammock. And it's handy. It was handy to have like a changing room, because the tent is nice to just be in there and not be in the dirt, or if you're changing your socks and things like that. So I had the tent set up and I slept really well in the hammock, and I heard a few animals go by at night, which I assumed they were bears at that point. And after the next weekend, they were for sure bears. So that's sort of a prelude. But I hunted the next day. I got back on that same rock. I basically did the same thing. I was consistent. I just got back on that rock, hunted for the first couple hours of light, see if anything would come up the straw and through this pinch point, and listen, try to hope for some beagles, which I didn't hear anything. And what did I do? I think I explored a little bit the second full day. I went up across the drainage and around. Well, I think I just went up to find like the next water source, or I knew there was somewhat of a seep up there, so I went and checked that, and there was nothing there. And I kind of explored horizontally and went up and over and found like another huge aspen glade area, and I found where there were some fresh tracks that were moving from the aspen glade area up into this dark timber and blow down area. So I followed some tracks, and on my way through there, I stopped a couple times and did some just raking on the trees and a few cow calls. Nothing much, just to sort of slowly, if there was something around there, maybe it would spark some interest. At this point, I have a either sex tag, so I'm going after a cow or a bull, and who knows. I was just trying to be light and easy and follow the tracks, and I got to a certain point where the water was in a pool at like the highest elevation that I could find. It was still on the edge of this aspen glade and dark timber, and I sat in there and I cooked up some ramen noodles and I hung out. The draw was pretty thick with berries and stuff. I also have a bear tag, so I decided to hang out over this water where there's some potential bear activity, and nothing happened. But that's okay, because I ended up moving through and sort of traversing downhill a little bit and found a pretty decent area where it's just really thick with blowdown and stuff. And I was just looking off into, like, because you can see from up there, I could see down into like this different drainage. And where I came up from, this hillside, this like sagebrush and berry bush type hillside, I could see that, and I caught movement down there. And I was supposed to meet Jeffrey, or he was going to be coming up potentially. I didn't know for sure, to his saddle coyote camp, and I was like, "Is that Jeffrey?" And then I pull up the binos. I'm like, "That's a bear," and it was like golden. I was like looking at the binos. I'm like, "That's a big bear." I'm like, it's by itself. You know, normally the boars are by themselves, and I was like, "That's a long ways down there." Basically halfway up from where I came, but I had quite a bit of elevation. So, and the wind was blowing up the hill. So if I had thought that I could maybe get a chance at this bear, I would just have to go for it. So I dropped down a little bit, got out and around this blowdown, and followed this. I kept my elevation up on the hillside, but I followed the contour, like before, of the terrain all the way around to this other ridge. I did end up having to climb somewhat to get up on this ridge, and I didn't know exactly which face he was on, because I was, I don't know, 1,800 yards away or so as the crow flies, and I think I got over there in like 25-30 minutes, and my heart was going like crazy, and I got to the upper ridge, and I was sort of walking down, glassing into all the brush, kept moving, and then I smelled something really sweet, and I move over to the edge of the ridge, and I look down, and sure enough, the bear's right there and 55 yards away, and I glass him, just looking. I'm like, okay, this is like, I don't know how big this bear is, but he looks fairly big, and I've got a boar tag, and so I decided to try and stalk this bear, and the wind was blowing right up at me, and the sagebrush was sort of 3 or 4 feet at times, but would go down to 2 feet, and there's kind of these like somewhat trails going down, and I initially hid behind the rock and looked down with my rangefinder, ranged him, and he's just so busy just foraging these berries. The wind was blowing at me pretty strong, so I dropped my pack, which sometimes you're able to do, sometimes you're not, but I was in an area where I was figuring I wasn't going to be going very far, so I slipped down, kind of crouching with my bow, and just moving along and scaling behind, and would watch him. When he would turn his head away, I would move a little further and get behind some bushes and kind of be like on the ground and have my hand and on my bow and kind of be like crab crawling almost down this to be as silent as possible. And then I got to an area where there was enough elevation where I could stand up and sort of regain that bent over posture, and the bear was still in this berry patch. And I got to about 25 yards from this berry patch, and the bear moved from that one into the next one over, and I had no shot. And so I sort of kept on slinking over and trying to, at one point I was 15 yards from this bear, but it was on the other side of the bushes, and there's no telling which way he was going to go. And I just kept listening. I would hear him moving, so I kind of backed up the range, up the elevation, and tried to traverse some more. And all of a sudden I saw him at like 40 yards again, and he was moving pretty good horizontally along the contour, and I ended up moving above where I thought he was, and couldn't see anything. I could only see like 10-15 yards in front of me, and I think the wind switched, and I heard him kind of take off down the hill. I'm like, okay, well, I got busted. But I think what he did is he moved through that berry patch, and I think he was just sitting in the shade under these two big ponderosas, and it was interesting just to have that experience and not get a shot, but, stalk and try and get them going. And I got done with that, and I moved up the hill, and I was so thirsty. I looked at my heart rate, and it was going like 167 beats per minute, and I knew I was just dying of thirst at this point, and I knew I needed water. So I moved over to the backpack and I just grabbed my pack and I drug it over into like a piece of shade and laid down there and just sucked on my hydration bladder for a good 20-30 minutes. Actually, I need to back up because once I noticed my heart rate was so high, I ended up just needing to get in the shade before I could get water to calm down and take some breaths and cool off, because I was starting to feel like exhausted to the point where, like, if I would have kept on pushing it, I would have needed to, it was like almost like heat exhaustion at that point, because it was so hot and the sun was just beating down, and it was like 90 something degrees. So I felt like I just needed to lay down and at least get some shade. I knew I could tolerate not having water for an extra 5-10 minutes or something like that, but I needed to cool down and breathe, like, and release all that adrenaline somehow, or just relax. But by the time I went and got my water and rehydrated and made my way back over to my coyote camp, I was there in time for evening to sit the draw. So I sat on the rock, and nothing happened that evening. Just made my way back up to camp and got another good night's sleep, and decided that the next day I would just bear hunt, because there was one elk that came through there. I didn't see any tracks, no fresh sign, some old sign, and they're in there at some point, but there was no sign over there. So I woke up in the morning, sat the draw just to see if a bear could come through there or anything. But then I moved back over to where I originally spotted the black bear the day before, and I was working the terrain at the top of this ridge and just glassing into all the bushes. I got over there by 9:30 or so, and out in the sunny area, the wind was blowing up by that time. The thermals were moving up, and I just glassed everything. I'd walk out to like a rock knob, glass down both sides, and And I kind of made this pattern for a couple hours, just sort of slowly moseying along this ridge and glassing. And I'd sit and glass and wait and just do that until I spotted this nice spruce tree right up on the ridge, sort of where I could see most of the berry patches. And I hunkered down in there in some shade, and this is when I made the macaroni and cheese. And it was like, it was really good. But I was sitting there boiling water with the jet boil and looking off into the whole valley and just waiting for a bear. I wrote in my journal for a while, and I was stirring up the mac and cheese, and I ended up eating this mac and cheese, and it was really delicious because this was day 3 or something like that, but it ended up getting so warm in my belly. It was just a ton of heat, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna take a nap up here for sure. So I kind of laid down and somewhat dozed off and just kind of relaxed until about 3 o'clock. And at that point, I decided that there were probably a lot of bears in the area, no elk, and I wanted to go see what Jeffrey had seen on his camera and if he was seeing any elk or anything like that. So I went back to camp and rolled up my camp and then hiked back up and down the ridge. And as soon as I got to where I was going to drop off the ridge, I found this big giant elk shed here, which might be a little hard to pull out, but I'll try. This thing is a 7 by 7. I guess you can kind of see the whole thing like that. There we go. Yeah, just nice big 7 by 7. Right on my way down to go figure out what was going on with Jeffrey. So it's just weird with the hunts, right? Like, I went after this bear, and then because I was over in that area, I found this shed, and I also found 2 other smaller sheds. Oh no. Too much going on over here. Right, Woody? Too many props. Anyhow, that's just what happens. You kind of hunt, you let the dictations of the hunt be determined by what you find and what you naturally want to go after, and then things like this happen. This nice big shed, which is I was telling myself earlier throughout the hunt that this shed is I was telling myself earlier that I'm pretty good at finding small sheds, because the first one I found was this one. The day I was glassing around and looking for bear, I found this shed, this little guy, which was sweet. But then on the way down, I found that big shed, and this shed. It's kind of got a cool, weird point here, like a crown, but this little guy too. So 3 sheds, all because I wanted to hunt a bear. But I think it was a good thing I was bear hunting, because it made up some time where these elk weren't really in there yet. And I don't even know if they are in there now, because I kind of moved out of that area after the next weekend, which basically I went back to check on Jeffrey. I found this antlers, and he wasn't hunting, so I went to his house, and it was just hot, and we kind of bullshitted and relaxed and just made a nice dinner, some tacos, and had some wine with him and his wife, and talked about our history and like family lineages and just these amazing things that we've come up with throughout our lives. It was just really nice to have some wine and talk to some really smart people. So I thoroughly enjoyed that time, and it was just nice to sort of take a break and kind of be on vacation again. So we ended up going in the morning and taking care of his mules, because he's got 2 mules, and we go and feed them and either move them from pasture to the barn or vice versa. So it was kind of another fun adventure with all this, is taking care of the mules, and maybe we'll be using them for packing one day if we make some trails and things like that. But it seems like the blowdown is so bad that people aren't, unless there's an actual good trail, packing mules. So in due time. But sort of a neat, fun Western adventure thing to learn about for me and enjoy with Jeffrey. So we ended up doing that and making some breakfast, and I headed back to Denver. It was Labor Day weekend, stuck in a bunch of traffic. The classic rat race back to the city, right, from Northwest Colorado. So I came with another week of work and some more training and some more grocery shopping to get the right essentials for the hunt and take out the gear that I didn't want and put back in the gear that I wanted to use, and sort of just redial my pack to where it's lighter. And I'm pretty sure I shaved a decent amount of weight off of it, which was good for this next weekend. And the plan was to go back and see what was on the camera, check the other camera, see, what sort of sign turned up in a week, and just go from there. I didn't really have a plan. So I went back and we checked the first camera by the saddle, and there was multiple pictures of a bear, and Jeffrey had left his binoculars there the 3 weeks beforehand, and I noticed them on the ground, but I thought he had just brought them in and left them there. But he's like, "Oh, look at these." I was like, "Oh, shoot," and the dial had been chewed on by a bear. And so it was like these nice pair of binoculars just chewed on. So it was sort of funny, but no elk on that camera. So I left him there, and he hunted in that area. I moved along up to the big bull bed and got in my hammock camp. I didn't bring the tent this weekend because I was just gonna hammock camp because that was what was working. There's nowhere flat to be, so I just was gonna hammock camp. So I got in there. Let's see here. Friday, I think. I almost can't keep it straight at this point, but I went in there and I checked the camera in the evening, and there was nothing on it. No elk, no deer, no bears. So I ended up doing the same sort of general hunt in the morning in that draw where animals move through. It's like a main corridor up and down this drainage, and I didn't see anything. Nothing happened. So I decided to go see what was going on in this other direction, sort of downhill a little bit. And I knew there was like a couple of fingers that came together and two creeks that came together down here. So I was wondering if there was, some darker timber, or they were staying more towards private ground, a little bit lower. And I went and explored down there and found a creek crossing on the other drainage and some tracks down there. Nothing fresh, pretty old tracks. But that was the most tracks I had seen, was right in this certain creek crossing. So I kind of hung out there for 3, 4, 5 hours during the heat of the day, hoping that something would come in there and grab a drink and I'd get a shot. Absolutely nothing happened, and I made my way back to the coyote camp and sat in the draw, or on the rock. Actually, I didn't sit on the same rock that I had been sitting on, which is a really good thing. I was sitting back further and down the ridge further to stay like up and out of the wind a little bit. It was still like a 30-yard shot down to the draw, or if something was up higher on the hill, it was a 20-yard shot, so pretty perfect. But I kept on hearing some sticks cracking in the back, and these sticks were getting louder, and there's multiple areas where things were cracking, and I knew something was coming, so I stood up and I got my bow, and I didn't make any noise, and all of a sudden I could see like some black. I'm like, oh, this is a black bear. So the bear came down the main trail right where they're supposed to, and then two cubs came and followed right after. So I got this mama bear and two cubs, and they're working their way basically right towards me. I start videoing on my phone because I didn't have my tripod with my camera set up or anything at that point. And I was filming with my phone, and the bears walked along basically right below me, like 15 yards, and then they made their way back down the draw. So they kind of came out down the draw, across the creek, and then made their way along the berry patch on the edge, and then back down. And they were gone. I was like, okay, that was cool. And then probably 20 minutes later, I hear something coming back up the draw, and it's just crunching and crunching. There's this same mama black bear, sow black bear, right in the creek, just pawing everything, looking for bugs, just scraping everything away as she was going up this creek, right? And her cubs were coming behind and following along, and she does that loop, but this time they are higher up on the hill, and they're basically coming right towards me, and the cub stands right on the rock where I was standing hunting those other few nights. So I was looking over, I'm like, oh my god, thank goodness I'm not sitting right on that rock right now, because I'd have a bear cub in my lap. And they were moving along the side of the hill and sort of moving towards me, and they're getting closer and closer, and I've got my camera out, and I've got the phone in one hand, and I have my pinky on my bowstring, and the bow's set against my hip, and I've got my Glock in my other hand, and I'm just filming, and if anything were to happen, I'd try and fire a warning shot or something like that. Hopefully I wasn't going to get charged by mama bear, but this cub comes up no more than 6 feet away. This bear is right in front of me, the cub, and its mom is behind the cub and at 10 feet, and the wind switches and she smells me and just huffs down the hill. So luckily the wind switched and that bear cub didn't start walking right up to climb my leg. It seemed like it could have, but they huffed away, and that was the last of the bears until I got into the hammock camp. And I heard them come back up again, and they were, feeding 50 yards away from me. I heard another bear above me. I had just had bears cruising around for most of the evening. And this evening was sort of a special evening because the moon was out and it was super bright. It was supposed to be really good hunting during the day because this moon was really bright and it was up at night, so they would be moving during the day. So like if it's bright at night, they'll move for a bit, but then they'll bed up at that like morning evening transition and then move again midday instead of like moving at the morning evening transition and then bedding for most of the day. It like switches their schedule, so you're hopefully to get some daytime movement, which I did not, but I'm sure they were moving somewhere, just not where I was. So it was kind of spooky having bears all around. I had my food tied up in a tree, but I don't know. I smell like a human, but also these really delicious honey stinger cookie treats that I love, and it's just interesting. So I've got my Glock with a light on it, and I've got my headlamp, and I'm looking around, just like keeping an eye out, just in my hammock, wrapped with my tent rainfly and my sleeping bag and sleeping pad in there. So it's not really any protection. You don't feel safe at all. I mean, unless you have a Glock, but you're not protected by any outside walls besides a 10 wall. But it's just interesting. You kind of have to go in this headspace of like, I need to sleep. They don't want me, they want my food. And if anything comes close, I'll be able to hear them and probably spook them off. So nothing ended up happening with the bears in camp that night. And I ended up hunting the draw in the morning and just kind of realized, like, there's no elk sign in here. I'm covered up in bears. I need to go and find Jeffrey and make another plan to either get out, move down the way, find some more ground, try and find some elk. So I went down and where Jeffrey was camping and did some bugles and nothing. And that was like our communication. I was supposed to blow the horn, and if I got anything, it was windy at that point of the day, so he couldn't really hear me. And I was getting thirsty and decided if we were going to camp one more night up there, I needed more water. So I meandered down to get some water and found some flagging, and I followed this flagging like right to this creek crossing. And I guess it's some guys from Georgia that come in there and do these flagging deals or whatever. But I got some water and I hiked back up and still nothing. It was like an hour and a half later. So I blow the bugle again, and then all of a sudden I hear from the top of the ridge some bugle type communication banter, and Jeffrey ended up coming down, and he didn't see much sign and just bear sign, and we ended up going down that night and just sleeping in the cabin across the way, and woke up early the next morning, and we wanted to go check out this other area across the drainage where there are some wallows, and we ended up hiking into this area where there's some wallows and found that a bull had just wallowed up in this wallow. So we set up a trail camera at that one, and then there was another drinking hole near there, and this is in this like somewhat flat aspen glade shelf where there's some seeps that are coming out of the bottom of the rocks, and that's where the notorious game spot deer. There's deer tracks in there, and they've had trail camera in this position too before in years past when they're hunting this area, and we've gotten pictures of elk and pictures of deer. So we threw the cameras up, and it was hot, pretty nice out. it was Sunday, so I had to head back to Denver. So we sat till like 3 or 4. So we put like 4 or 5 hours in at the water hole, and just I saw one deer, but nothing else really happened. Kind of just scouted out the area almost, but did not move too far into other territories from there. So head back to Denver. We got another week of work and preparation, and I ended up deciding that I was going to head back up there and hunt over this new wallow, or check that camera. And so I get in there, I check the camera, and there's some pictures of some grass, not really much, and then all of a sudden there's an elk at night, and then more elk, and these are cow elk starting to come through here at night. And then there's a picture of like 2 cows, 2 calves in the water hole. And then all of a sudden there's a picture where they're looking away. All of them are like looking right away. And then the next picture is this bull, this pretty nice 6x6 bull that, yeah, it'd be a great bull to harvest out there. And I'm just, it looked like one side, the, one of the points here was like, I don't know, it would be like this point, or I'm not going to pick up that big shed again, but it looked like it was broke off, but turns out it was just covered in like muck after further review. And so it's just perfect, pretty symmetrical 6x6 bull. And I kept swiping through pictures. Another night went by with nothing, and then the next night they're in there again. Probably the same cows, and then another picture of that same bull. So I could see his tracks, and there's some good sign in there. So I was pretty excited to sit. But the thing about it is that these animals are coming in the middle of the night. So that tells me a couple different things, which is just interesting. The two things that it tells me, number one, is that these elk are living or bedding far away, probably like a mile or a mile and a half. I don't really know in elk territory how far away they bed. If this is like their 1-2 in the morning, that's almost their furthest away loop point, potentially. And the other thing that it tells me is that eventually during the rut, they could be coming in here during daytime because they're scenting up the area, they're wallowing around, and the bull's been on camera twice. So they kind of indicate where they're going to be on like a cold, crisp morning, or a cooler day, a midday stroll where they're looking for more cows or something like that. They're going to check these areas that they've scented up, because when cows come in heat, if it's much like whitetails, I'm sure they go to where all the scent is to get picked up by more bulls. So it's just an indication of later in the season, when it's getting really heavy on the rut action, they're going to be moving through, hopefully during the daytime. But nothing happened that evening, sitting over the wallow. But that night, I woke up at, 1:30 in the morning, to some racket and this bull like glunking, making this like I can't do it that great, but this is just like this glunking noise, and you know that he has a cow with him because of this like guttural type. It's not a scream or anything. He's just making a testosterone built growl or pant or grunt type noise. So eventually I could hear him kind of tending around, like moving a little bit. The cow would move probably, and then the bull would move along. And then eventually I did hear the cow mew like 3 times. So I knew it was just the bull and the cow probably. And I was really excited to see if I got trail camera pictures to see like where they went, because I wanted to figure that out, where they're going. I wanted to follow their tracks back or something. Sure enough, at about 3 in the morning, it started raining. So it rained on all the fresh tracks. And it just was what it was. And I go and I check the camera, and there's no pics on the camera. So like, for whatever reason, either they just used the one side, because I did cock the camera slightly to a different direction, and I ended up finding the really fresh droppings on this side of the water hole where my camera was slightly pitched away from. So I think I missed the motion, but I also found the big bull's droppings right above where I would have my little hunting blind at, and he was just on this knob just munching grass. Like, you could see that the grass was just nibbled off all around. There's no tracks, but like really fresh droppings. So I hunted there in the morning, sat the water hole in the morning, and then I just decided that I was going to try and figure out and follow where these tracks were going. So since there were no fresh tracks, I kind of use, when the ground's soft, sometimes the elk will just like push through the top couple inches of soil. And there's like, the main trails will have like these like cups of depressions. They're not really a track, but, well, they are a track, but nothing fresh. But you can see where like the main trails will be these push-in spots. And I kind of followed those, and eventually I came across more, and I made my way up to this section in this drainage where there was another water hole, and it smelled like elk, and I kept on making my way up this elk trail to some blowdown that would go up and over the ridge. So I kind of meandered and took the trail. Sign got really light, hardly any sign up there, and I got over the ridge, blew the bugle a few times, tried to get something to respond, absolutely nothing. So I worked my way up this next saddle and found this sort of knob per se, but pretty big, like with some rock outcrops around the side and some aspen forage going right around the knoll. And I picked up a fresh set of tracks, which in hindsight I should have just followed that set of tracks, but what I ended up doing was staying above that track in the rocks so I could look down. So I just sort of did that whole go out to like a point, glass down, move back in, and move back out to a point. And it was like all blow down behind me, or this rock outcrop stuff, and then down into like a bunch of food and a dark timber strip. So I kind of meandered through this area, which looks like cat country to me. And so just trying to be careful and just sneaking through there looking for elk, not really thinking about cats at this point. But I found some more sign up there, and I didn't really have a game plan, but I kind of looped back down and I found this another water hole area, and it was very fresh droppings, beds, and there was no water there, but it was like almost ready to be a seep or water, but there was a bed like right in it. It was just nice and cool, and you could tell that the elk were in there, and it was at that same elevation as like this other water hole that's really close. So I kind of followed that a little bit, and I found 2 different places where a bull had just raked his antlers in the dirt and rolled and done his thing. It smelled like crazy, like elk. And I'm like, okay, they're like in here thick at night. Where are they during the day? No bugles, no sounds. So I went back down and sat the water hole for midday and made some more mac and cheese and just enjoyed just some rest and recovery. And then I decided I was looking at my map, and I decided I wanted to go explore back up where I was, but further in a couple different directions. So I ended up taking this kind of horrible route along the edge through this blowdown, and was trying to bugle down into this ravine, and hopefully like something was bedded up in this dark timber blowdown stuff. So I made my loop around, and I ended up getting through the blowdown, and then there was some open dark timber, and then I started to see some tracks, and then there's some like fresh droppings inside in there. And I followed the trail down to where it like squeezed out between these rocks and all this blowdown. There's a trail that they were using to get down through there, to where I found a bunch of more heavy sign in this dark timber row. It was like dark timber, small aspens, rock outcrops. So it's like, this is perfect. This is where I'm going to sit for the evening. Hopefully something comes out, works its way through there. And it was hot. It was 3-4 o'clock. So I come out and move up to this tree where there's a little bit of shade. So I'm sitting down and looking at my phone, which I've had off most of the time because there's no service. I don't have a charger or like a backup battery, which it could be good to get. So I'm sitting there dropping pins on my phone where this opening was for the elk, where I found the other drop pins, and scouting around a little bit differently. And I turn my phone back off, set it down, and I look over to my left, and I just hear this and up jumps a mountain lion from like crouched, like pounce position. It was like I saw its face over the bushes, and it just and trotted up the hillside, and his tail was like, it was huge. It was like a 200 plus pound mountain lion, and it was hunting me. It was stalking me. And the moment 5-10 minutes of not being aware, this mountain lion got within 15 yards of me, and it was huge. And so I quick grabbed my gun off my pack, which I had my pack laying on the ground behind me, and my holster is on my left side. Just the way the pack sits, it like would be pointed in at me if it was on the right side, but it points down and away when it's on my left side. And it was the craziest thing. I grabbed the gun pretty quick, and I didn't pull up, but I had it in my hand and watched it as it ran up the hillside like this red, like, just huge cat. Never seen a mountain lion in the wild, and it was giant. And I heard it going up, and then it just went up and over a rock, and I didn't hear anything. So I'm sure it just stopped right behind that rock and like was looking around the rock or whatever. But I grabbed my pack. I'm like, I'm getting out of here. Grab my pack, put that on, grab my bow, and I've got my Glock in my right hand and my bow in my left. And I moved down towards where the cat was laying, and I wanted to see its tracks or whatever. And I'm like looking up, looking down, trying to find the tracks. There's no tracks. There was no sign of this. Like, maybe there was a little bit of dust out of place, but literally it must have been walking with like its claws up and on each piece of grass, and just he slinked right behind this rock and just below these bushes. and headed up the trail, so I couldn't find any tracks. I didn't really stick around there too long to very much inspect, but I ended up just hiking back down about halfway, and I took a break and I made a video and explained like what just happened in that like state, that account, mindset of it just happening, this cat hunting me. And I was pretty shook up, and I didn't know what I was going to do, so I ended up just going back down to camp. And as soon as I got there, I'm like, I'm rolling up camp, getting out of here. I had enough time to where I could get out with plenty of daylight and be comfortable, because, I mean, a 200-pound cat, 200-plus pound cat, I'm like 170, and I don't have talents. Granted, you've got your gun, but like whether I could have drawn it fast enough, if that cat would have like been coming towards me, it would have been going faster. When it ran up the hill, it wasn't running, it was just like like just sauntering. Like when that cat would explode, it'd be like and it'd be on top of you in no time. So I need to make sure I pack the big knife wherever on me, so I can, if anything happens again and I'm not like have my gun out or something. At that point, if I had my gun out, I could have, picked up and shot or something if this cat were charging me. And now, when I sit down and I'm doing something, I'm going to have my Glock in my hand and my bow sitting down, and like the gun's going to be in my hand much more than in the holster if I hunt in this area again, and just be ready. I looked at trying to get a tag, but I couldn't find it. I couldn't get a tag. I'm trying to figure out if there's anyone in that area that has a tag to go up in there, and maybe we could call it in and get the cat, and that might take some pressure off these elk. But it was wild. It was like, it didn't seem too crazy at the time. It scared the crap out of me. But now that after you think about it, and it's like, that could have been really bad. Really bad. And it's these life lessons. you gotta always be aware, especially out in those mountains. And I was tired. I could have been napping. If I would have been napping, it would have been all over me. If I would have just like sat there, laid on my pack, come back for a nap, shit, I would have heard something way too late. So it's just interesting too that when I looked that way, like it knew I saw it. Like I didn't realize I saw it. I probably wouldn't have seen it if it stayed still almost. I maybe would have picked out like that's a cat face right there, but maybe not. And it's just, I got lucky that I looked over at that time and it took off running. So, lo and behold, the next morning, Jeffrey was camped that night and out there in the morning, and he heard it scream before daylight 3 times up there where I was. And I can't imagine what the sound of a mountain lion screaming before sun or before light would sound like. Just a shrill of crazy cat noise. That in itself would scare the crap out of me. So I don't know what I'm going to do. But there's elk in there, and if I'm always ready and maybe I have someone with me, I could go back in and hunt. And if something happens where this cat shows up again, it's, we got to figure out what's going to happen, because I'm just really glad we're not in grizzly country and we have to deal with the mountain lions and the bears and wolves moving in now. But it's all just wild and scary. So I wanted to share that story with you guys. Well, it's somewhat fresh. This was just last weekend. So I'm still trying to figure out what to do. This was 2 days ago. Yeah, it happened Saturday. It's Monday. So yeah, 2 days ago. I'm just trying to figure out what to do for the rest of elk season here. More than likely, hopefully go back in with someone with a tag or someone that I know and hunt it up and try and get that big bull. And I think that this is probably a good place to end. I've been dragging along these conversations and the stories of the near cougar attack, and I'm sure there's just going to be more. Well, I know there's going to be more hunting adventures to share with all you guys. And hopefully we'll get a cat, a bear, and an elk. One way or another. Until then, this will be it. So, thanks for listening to another episode of Thrilling Moments, the Clay Formula podcast, whatever else we can hashtag. If someone wants to fill in more hashtags for me that they think that would be good. Otherwise, it'd be really cool if you subscribed. It doesn't bother me either way, but I think that I'll have some more content coming out in this realm. If you like these hunting stories, I'll have more people on here. I just wanted to talk about this in my own storytelling version, which I'm sure sort of came out jumbly at some points, recollecting everything in chronological order for the first time. This is just one take here. So I hope you enjoyed it. Come back again. Talk to you then.